Hello everyone, welcome back to my new video. So today we'll be discussing about anemia. So without any further delay, let's get started. Starting with the definition, it has been said that anemia is a blood disorder characterized by the reduction in the RBC count, the hemoglobin content and the packed cell volume or the PVC. We have all heard about the term anemia and we often used to know that anemia is a kind of disorder where there is reduced amount of the concentration of the blood in the body. So more precisely, there will be reduced blood content along with the, or there can be reduced hemoglobin content or the reduced packed cell volume. And generally reduction in RBC count, hemoglobin content and PCV occurs because of firstly the decreased production of the RBCs, increased destruction of RBCs and excess loss of blood from the body. Now definitely if the production of the RBC is low, then definitely the content of the RBC will be low. Again, if the destruction of the RBC more, then again the content of RBC will be less, and the excess loss of blood, all these factors constitute to the disease called as anemia. Next, classification. So anemia can be classified by two methods. Firstly, the morphological classification means about the size, shape, color, etc. Another being the etiological classification. Now etiological means about the origin. So based on these two factors, we are going to study about the classification of anemia in detail. So starting with the morphological classification. As I mentioned that morphological classification depends upon the size and color of the RBC. And the size of RBC is determined by the mean corpuscular volume, that is the MCV. And I have already created a separate video regarding the MCV, MCH, the MCHC, that is the packed cell volume. Or the blood indices and the packed cell volume in details. And the color is also determined by the MCHC, which is also referred as the mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration. Now, based on these parameters, it can be classified into firstly the normocytic, normochromic. Now, normocytic means normal, so the size of the RBC will be normal, and normochromic, chromic means color, normo meaning normal, so normochromic means the color of the RBC will be the of normal tone, that is of red in color. Next, the normocytic hypochromic means normocytic, again the size of the RBC will be normal, and hypochromic means the chrome or the color of the RBC will be slightly lower than its normal chrome or normal color. Next, the macrocytic hypochromic. Macrocytic meaning big, so the size of the RBCs will be big, and hypochromic, that means the color of the RBC will be lesser than its normal tone. And the microcytic hypochromic, microcytic meaning the small, that means the RBC will be smaller in shape, and hypochromic meaning that the normal, again the color of the cell or the RBCs will be less than its normal tone. And I have also mentioned that a single RBC cell cannot be hyperchromic, only a group of cells, its concentration and average can be hyperchromic and not hypo, and in general it cannot be hyperchromic, a single RBC cell. If you want to know more about this, you can check my previous video. I'll leave a link down in the description below. Now we are going to study about the etiological classification. On the basis of etiology, that means the study of cause or origin, anemia is divided into 5 types. Firstly, the hemorrhagic anemia. Second, the hemolytic anemia. Third, the nutrition deficiency anemia. The fourth, aplastic anemia. And fifth but not least, the anemia of chronic diseases. So based on this factor, we will be studying each of them in details about their cause and the morphology as well. So starting with the hemorrhagic anemia. So we all know hemorrhage means any loss of the blood. So the loss of the blood can again be of two types, and it can be acute loss of blood or the chronic loss of blood. Now acute loss of blood can often be seen in conditions such as the accidents, cuts, injuries, etc. And chronic loss of blood can be seen in conditions, for example, such as in piles, then gastrointestinal internal bleeding, or any kind of internal hemorrhages, and all these condition. There is the chronic loss of blood. So what happens in this hemorrhagic anemia or in this picture is that the morphology of the RBC, when we compare in the acute loss of the blood, it will be normocytic and normochromic. Then that means definitely only the blood or the volume of the blood is reduced. That is why it is normocytic and normochromic. And in chronic loss of blood, it is microcytic and hypochromic. So why? Because in chronic loss of blood, obviously there will be deficiency of both the vitamin B12, folic acid, iron and other factors, as a result of which the color of the RBCs will be lesser than its normal tone, and also the size of the RBC will be smaller. And while in the acute loss of blood, there is no direct loss of this factor, so that is why the color and the shape of the RBC is to the usual type, only the volume is decreasing. That is why it is normocytic, normochromic. Next, coming to hemolytic anemia. Now firstly we need to know what is hemolysis. Hemolysis actually means the breakdown of the anything, and the hemolytic anemia means the breakdown of the RBCs. So again, the hemolytic anemia can be of two types. One is the intrinsic hemolytic anemia, and another is the extrinsic hemolytic anemia. So actually the intrinsic hemolytic anemia means those conditions in which it is, that means there is defect in the RBCs. It can be defect due to the genetic factor or the genes, as a result of which there is hemolysis of the RBCs. Whereas extrinsic hemolytic anemia means the condition where due to other cases such as liver failure, renal disorder, hypersplenism, burns, infections such as hepatitis, malaria and septicemia, certain drugs such as penicillin, antimalarial drugs and sulfate drugs, poisoning by lead, coal and tar, presence of isoagglutinins like anti-RH, autoimmune diseases such as RA and ulcerative colitis. All these factors causes the RBCs to break down. So that is why it is known as the extrinsic hemolytic anemia. So what happens in this case, the morphology is normocytic and normochromic, because there is no significant drop in the iron and the vitamin B12 and the folic acid content. That is why it is normocytic and normochromic. Next, we have the nutritional deficiency anemia. Now again, the nutritional deficiency anemia can be of the following type. That is the iron deficiency, the protein deficiency, the vitamin B12 and the folic acid. Now this is one of the most important types of anemia, the categorized because it is quite widely followed and is often seen in peoples of today's generation due to their poor diet. So in iron deficiency anemia, the morphology will be microcytic and hypochromic. Now definitely the iron, we have already studied in the packed cell volume video that whenever there is iron deficiency, the cells will be of smaller size and hence it is microcytic, and also hypochromic because the iron deficiency, it is related with a pigment, and if there is deficiency of that, then definitely the color of the RBCs will be slightly lower than its normal. That is why it is hypochromic. Thus it is microcytic, hypochromic. Next, protein deficiency. Again, protein deficiency will lead to defective cytoplasmic volume, as a result of which the cells will be larger in size, hence macrocytic and hypochromic. Next, the vitamin B12 deficiency. We have already know that vitamin B12 deficiency leads to macrocytic anemia, that is leads to larger volume of cell, and it can be either normochromic or hypochromic. That it can be of either normal color tone or it can be deviated, that is slightly less than its normal color tone. Next, the folic acid. It leads to megaloblastic anemia and it can be hypochromic. Next, another classification is the aplastic anemia. Now what is aplastic anemia? The aplastic anemia is nothing but it is any kind of bone marrow disorder. Now why this occur? This can occur due to various conditions such as repeated exposure to X-rays or the gamma rays in certain tests. Then in certain disease conditions such as the tuberculosis, and in certain conditions such as the rheumatoid arthritis, in certain drugs or any other even a certain kind of viral diseases as well. So these are such one of the few conditions where there can be the bone marrow disorder leading to aplastic anemia. Again, the morphology of the RBCs in aplastic anemia is normocytic, normochromic, because there is the direct loss of the folic acid, vitamin B12 or the iron content. That is why it is normocytic, normochromic. Next, anemia of chronic diseases. It is caused in certain conditions such as non-infectious inflammatory diseases, that is rheumatoid arthritis, chronic infections such as tuberculosis, chronic renal failure, Neoplastic disorders such as Hodgkin's diseases. In this condition, again, the morphologies of the RBCs are again normocytic and normochromic due to the acute loss of the blood. So, these are the classification of the anemia and their type along with the morphology based on their etiology or the cause. So we have studied about the hemorrhagic anemia, hemolytic anemia, nutrition deficiency anemia, aplastic anemia and anemia of chronic diseases in details. So next we'll be studying about the signs and symptoms of anemia. So the signs and symptoms can be studied basis on the systems. Firstly, the skin and the mucous membrane. What is happening is here the color of the skin and mucous membrane becomes pale. Definitely, if the RBCs are less than a number, then it will lead to a more palish appearance. Paleness is more constant and prominent in buccal and pharyngeal mucous membrane, conjunctivae, lips, ear, lobes, palm and nail bed. So these are one of the clinical site for the examination of the anemia. One of the most prominent being the conjunctiva and also the general paleness of the skin, the palm and the sole. Skin loses the elasticity, becomes thin and dry. Thinning loss and early grayness of hair occur. The nails become brittle and easily breakable. So these are the signs and symptoms of anemia over the skin and the mucous membrane. Now over the cardiovascular system, there is increase in the heart rate, tachycardia and cardiac output. Now we can understand it with a simple term, that is if there is less amount of blood, then obviously the heart has to put more pressure or has to perform more work in order to send the RBCs quickly in order to meet the oxygen and the nutritional requirement to the body. That is why there is increase in the heart rate, which is known as the tachycardia, and also the cardiac output. Definitely heart is dilated and cardiac murmurs are produced due to these conditions. The velocity of the blood flow is increased. Definitely. Again, over the respiration, that means there is increase in rate and the force of respiration due to the similar explanation as above. Over the digestion, in digestion, the anemia causes the following symptoms such as the anorexia, nausea, vomiting, abdominal discomfort and constipation. These are the most common features. In pernicious anemia, there is atrophy of papillae in tongue, which is important, the atrophy of the papillae of the tongue. And in aplastic anemia, there is necrotic lesions appear in mouth and pharynx. So that's two things. Mainly in pernicious anemia, there is atrophy of the papillae in tongue, whereas in aplastic anemia, there is necrotic lesions that appears in the mouth and the pharynx. And over the metabolism, the overall BMR or the basal metabolic rate increases in severe anemia. Next, the renal system. Yes, obviously the renal function will be disturbed and albuminuria is more common. That is the presence of the albumin in the urine and the blood. And the reproductive system. In females, the menstrual cycle is often disturbed. It is very important, and there may be menorrhagia, oligomenorrhea or the amenorrhea. That means there will be painful menstruation, irregularity in frequency of the menstruation, or there can be complete absence of the menstruation respectively. And the neuromuscular system, the last but not the least, the common neuromuscular symptoms, that is increased sensitivity to cold, headache, lack of concentration, restlessness, irritability, drowsiness, dizziness or vertigo, and vertigo especially while standing, and fainting. So these are the common neuromuscular symptoms. And muscles become weak and the patient feels lack of energy and fatigue quite often and quite easily. So these are the impact of the anemia over the neuromuscular system. So with this we come to the end of today's video, and we have studied about the types of anemia, its causes, morphological and etiological factors, and the signs and symptoms of anemia. So if you have any confusion regarding this video, do let me know down in the comment section below. And if you like this video, do press the like button one. It really motivates me, and subscribe to my channel for more such videos. Thank you.